Okay, so they revealed the class's skills and abilities in Strike Force Heroes Remastered, and I figure I'll put in my 2 cents. I already did in the Discord, but I figured I'll do so here more organized and cordial because, well, it's not my knee-jerk reaction anymore. First thing I noticed is that every class only has one unique weapon, which I'm iffy about, but they did it in Strike Force Heroes 2, and that's also a good game, so I'll let it slide. Absolute Precision is a weird one, and a pattern you're gonna see with some of the skills, and that's that they will be perks that will encourage one playstyle, and then also encourage the exact opposite with another part of it. The accuracy increase while crouching is clearly meant to encourage sniping, while the dash is very clearly for melee, and both bonuses are alright. Being able to get more of a pinpoint accuracy on certain sniper rifles that wouldn't have it otherwise is a good perk, and having more mobility with your sword means that you not only can close the distance on enemies faster, but you can maybe make more gaps on certain maps. We'll have to see though. Honestly, you could develop out both these bonuses further and make them 2 separate perks, but it's whatever. Now we get to Blur, which is a previous perk coming back, and it's pretty good. Well, it was pretty good, but there's one change that definitely puts a pin in that, and that's the once per life effect, which is a change from the 30-second cooldown that it used to have. And once we go over all of these, I'll go over why the once per life is a negative change. Shadow Blend seems to be more or less the same, except they specify you're harder to detect by enemies, which many have pointed out kind of implies that enemies can still detect you, and a buff that makes you move 35% faster while invisible. Now this addition is actually really nice because if there's anything else that implies invisibility in the game that we don't know about yet, that would also apply due to it specifying invisibility. But if there's nothing else, you literally just get slightly faster for crouching, which isn't terrible. It means that you can actually have a better chance of keeping up with people along with your lunge with melee when using Shadow Blend. So it's not just a sniper exclusive ability anymore. In theory. Vital Sight is 25% headshot damage and plus 20% critical chance with melee weapons. And honestly, I'd probably buff the critical chance on melee more, but they're probably going to have additional critical chance on melee weapons when you reach a certain rarity, so you'll be able to hit 100 regardless. Which is good, since melee can't do headshots, having them have a high crit rate would really help out with the melee builds. But it does mean that, damage on sniper rifles will probably be able to ramp up better if it has similar damage multipliers as Strike Force Heroes 1, because you're getting more headshot damage along with the multiplier, and headshots on base already did more. So honestly, sniper overall is still looking like a superior option to melee. I'm thinking at best, melee may be low viable, but like I said, we'll see. Extreme Focus for 8 seconds gain enhanced vision, accuracy, and dash range. So, the enhanced vision is really vague. I'm not sure if it means vision range, as in like when you use a sniper rifle, you can look further back with your sniper rifle than with other weapons. I assume it means that, but it could also mean that you're able to see invisible enemies because, well, as it says with Shadow Blend, you're more difficult to detect. Well, because of the vagueness of this, I'm not entirely sure what that entails. It would help a lot more if I knew exactly what it did and I was given actual numbers on how far this went. Phoenix Blade, which is an ability which gives you a weapon that's more powerful, supposedly, than the weapon you're currently carrying, and has a bunch of high damaging strikes, and heals the assassin for kills and extends the ability's duration. Alright. So, 3 had a couple of kill streaks much like this, and they were by far the worst kill streaks in the game.
What have we done to deserve this pain?
But also, the worst part about that ability was that it would force you to use that weapon until you ran through it, until the duration was up / you spent all the ammo. I worry, to a reasonable degree I'd like to think, that these abilities will have a similar problem if not taken care of. So what I would propose is that you make sure that this scales very well, and that when you use this weapon, you're able to switch off of it. So either make it low cost and low duration, or make it that refunds a bit of the duration back when you unequip it, depending on how much duration was left. Because being stuck with a weapon that has limited range, no longer able to use your sidearm to compensate for the lack of range, and having the lowest health pool in the game which could allow you to get killed by commandos and assassins regardless, even with the sustain, well, you can have the novelty there if you want, but it's just, if you keep it similar to 3, equipping it's going to be seen as nothing else but a rookie mistake. Even with all of this, I don't think it'll still be very good, but I think it's still worth pointing out. Full Radar. For 8 seconds, reveal the entire enemy team on the map, they also take 10% more damage. Now, I'm gonna actually go up to bat for Full Radar, because I personally think that vision is very underrated in games like these. With Full Radar, I'd be able to have full vision of the enemy team, while still being able to move around and not leaving myself vulnerable on one side zooming into the other. It gives me a lot more free movement and aim for hyper-accurate sniper rifles, while also rewarding map awareness and sniping in spots where I know the enemy would be open on that part of the minimap. With that out of the way, this is a terrible kill streak and that 10% damage will do essentially nothing. Full Radar for 8 seconds is okay, I guess, but having that taking up one of your slots for your abilities when it's supposed to be something special that empowers the hero is very underwhelming, and the damage given to it is very unlikely to change the threshold of killing certain classes. Frankly, I think this is better off being a perk than a kill streak. It's very niche, only a specific loadout and playstyle will actually suffice for it, and I think that's a great spot to put a perk. If you need a new kill streak, I don't know, add in True Stealth. That's a pretty good kill streak, and it works for both melee and snipers. And if you really wanted to get crazy with it, you could add something like it gets scaling damage the longer you remain invisible without hitting an enemy. Well, Smoke Bomb is still Smoke Bomb. The iframes are welcomed. I'm not sure how much it'll help, but it is a nice addition, and, well, I don't know. If it still works on CDF, it still has some place in existence. And now we're on the tank, and this is where stuff's gonna start getting a bit wacky. Because of all of these, I think Tank was the one that definitely needs the most changes. So let's go over these. Adrenaline. Kills immediately trigger a stronger health regen, healing 15 HP over 3 seconds. This is terrible, especially if it can be interrupted by damage. There's no reason for it to be this low and heal this little. Since Strike Force Heroes is a fast game with a low TTK, I'd highly recommend just making this instant. If you really need to, just put it on like a 2-3 second cooldown. I see no value in hiding for 3 seconds, so I'm more likely to survive a single revolver shot, assuming it's not a headshot or a crit. Heavy armor, 10% health. When blocking with a shield, damage reduced by an additional 15%. Same problem as Adrenaline, it doesn't offer enough to complement Tank's strengths. 10% health is very minimal. And the 15% on shields is alright, assuming that's plus 15% on the shield itself, and not plus 15% of whatever the shield has. It's still not amazing because the intrinsic problem with shields is that Strike Force Heroes is a platformer to a sense, so you will have to jump, you will have to stand up, and in those points you are left vulnerable without those effective hit points that you get from the shield. And when you're crouching with the shield, at least in one, it actually reduces the damage you get from your sidearm, which is really bad considering you sacrificed your primary for this, and now your sidearm is less effective. And now I'm sacrificing a perk, which isn't that much of a sacrifice, but we'll get to that, just to try to make it more effective. And this isn't as strong as the previous iterations, which allowed you to reduce the damage from all angles with this perk, which I would argue is one of the greater advantages of this because it means that you could utilize this even when surrounded. Unbreakable feels like more or less the same stuff, it's just trying to give you more EHP, but trying to find a more specific category to do it. Reducing the damage of criticals and headshots by 30% is a pretty alright exchange for a passive, but honestly, it feels very milquetoast and I'm not sure if I would replace it for something that's, well, more consistent. And now we get to Iron Will. And yes, before you post, I know that Justin said that this was a spelling error, and that they did not mean to put in once per life, and although I am skeptical that that may not be the case, I will give them the benefit of the doubt, even though I have no idea what Iron Will's actual cooldown is then. Only being active during half health is still a hell of a nerf. It means throughout this engagement, you have to drop below half for this ability to even come into play. So if you were to get hit by a sniper and you were about 54, and let's say you drop to around 25% health, and you flick around and kill that sniper, well, now your Iron Will would be active, and whoever hits you next will be the one you have to deal with, and is more likely in these scenarios to be wasted on some commando just plinking at you. So yeah, I think these last two perks need to be changed. Iron Will, I would just have it available up about maybe once every 5 seconds or every 3 seconds, and I'd have it only activate when someone does an amount of damage equal to a percentage of the tank's health, let's say at least 1/3. The numbers can be messed with in testing, but this allows for Iron Will to be used directly to deal with burst, reliably, while still being countered by other options. Unbreakable, I would like to have be the inverse of Iron Will. For Unbreakable, I would have it so that it decreases the incoming damage of an enemy's attack by a flat amount, and this flat amount scales with levels. You could say it's based on a percentage of the tank's max health, and then maybe put a cap on there in case there's a challenge mode that increases your max health so that, you know, you don't end up making the tank invulnerable inadvertently. But along with that flat damage decrease, there is a minimum damage that the attack deals. So you can make it like 5 or 6. But since it's a flat decrease, it's far inferior for hard-hitting attacks, while being effective against more continuous damage, such as the machine gun, the assault rifle, and options like those. Of course, you might have to adjust that minimum as the levels go on too, so it doesn't scale too hard, but it's less of a nothing burger than you take less damage from crits and headshots. Flamethrower. Well, it's at least different from Phoenix Blade, and it has different qualities, so I guess there's that. But I will also assert, once again, you should be able to switch off of it. Also, just make sure that the weapon itself doesn't suck. This feels more like a Juggernaut thing than a tank thing, but as long as you guys aren't going too hard in on the elementals, I don't care that much. Kevlar vests, well, that was more of a medic thing, but medic also has a really, really good kill streak from what I've seen, so I guess it evens out, and Bull would use Kevlar in the campaign, so it's not that far out there. Ricochet, it seems to be the same conceptually, but I'm sure they mess with some of the numbers with the invulnerability to projectiles. They probably make it so that it no longer reflects melee, but I'm not gonna lie, if you're getting into melee with a tank, Ricochet's not gonna really make a difference. You've either killed him or he's got you right where he wants you. True Tank reduces the damage by 40% for a short time. It doesn't specify how long, and it just seems to be more damage resistance, and it seems relatively useless if you're not at a high amount of health, and I feel like it's just going to be overshadowed by Kevlar and Ricochet. If I could recommend something to replace it here, I would say just ape the idea of Tesla Coil. Put down cover that takes up about up to your chest. You can still get hit by headshots, so it still has a weakness. And give it about 500 health. It's immune to headshots, but still suffers from critical hits. And allow that to be used as cover. And allow the tank to have a bunch of survivability crouching behind it, or using it to suppress an enemy. As well as having fellow teammates be able to utilize it. I'm not sure the bots will be programmed well enough to register that. I hope they are, but I'm not gonna count my chickens before they hatch, but it'll also be very useful in co-op. It'll provide a level of map awareness, objective control, team coordination, while still being exploited by the enemies by having assassins fire over the cover or melee through it, or having explosive classes fire over the cover, or even utilize the AoE to still damage the enemy regardless if they're too close. Alright, now we're on to Commando, Weapon Specialist, plus 50% increased spare ammo and plus 35% reload speed. That's pretty nice. I still wish they would have the ammo stat and the aim stat like they did in the first game, but we can't get everything we want. Pretty standard and useful across the board. I think it's a pretty good, just basic perk. Ammo feed. Weapons no longer need to reload. A non-machine gun fires 35% slower. I think this is a great machine gun option. It worked well in 2, and worked pretty solid in 1, and I think the reduced fire rate while allowing it to be used on other weapons is a great change. Although some may disagree, I think that the cost of DPS while being able to suppress an enemy fully with all of your arsenal is a very effective means of having a powerful perk that comes with a sacrifice. Some will argue that a reduced maximum ammo is a more appropriate change, but personally I think that the one that they're going with currently is a good idea. Martyrdom is still around, I guess, except now it drops 3 grenades on death, which means at the very least you're more likely to hit people with Martyrdom, because now you can rain death from above, and the grenades may bounce a bit more of a range and hit people. You know, if you pick up Martyrdom. Flame resistance, which, I mean, it was okay. I didn't really suffer that much from self-damage, but it's nice to have it because, well, to be frank, reducing that damage universally against all explosives means that you were pretty much just a tank against other commandos if they decided to take the explosive class stuff. Which they're less likely to now because now they have 3 types of weapons to choose from instead of 2. But In trade-off, it got buffed to have 10% damage reduction across the board, so effectively you have 10% more HP, I guess. I'm gonna be honest, I used Flame Resistance exclusively for whenever I was feeling cheeky, and I was gonna use point-blank bouncing Betty kill streaks to kill people. Assault Drone, let's hope it's better than the attack helicopter from the first game and the drones from the second. Bouncing Betty got nerfed to a cap of 1. Stop doing this to my babies. I don't know if they're going to adjust the damage as well. If they do, I'm going to have a breakdown, because later in the game, it still does alright, but it was having trouble killing without getting crits. Yeah, Bouncing Betty could crit. It was hilarious. The bots are smart enough to crouch around them, so you'd think it would be easy to counter, but the funny thing was, you could still just put them around edges and platforms that they would drop on, which would pretty much guarantee that they would just be in the range and get blown up and they couldn't avoid it. Well, putting in a cap of 1 means that you can't have a whole lot of them around and prepping to stack them, which was one of the reasons that Bouncing Bettys were overpowered. I get the nerf, but I don't think this is going to be as fun. I hope they keep it low cost, and I hope they keep it high damage, but honestly, I think the cap should have been somewhere around 3. With Ammo Wizard, you no longer consume your ammo, and machine guns fire 25% faster, which essentially means that you're not burning ammo when you fire the weapon, but I assume you still have to reload, because why else would ammo feed still be a thing? Why would you not make them synergize? But yeah, pretty straightforward, and a pretty reasonable kill streak if I would say so myself. Tear Gas for 10 seconds reduces the movement speed of all enemies by 25%, which is kinda weird. It's kinda meh. And I'm kind of worried that the bots won't be able to make jumps and they'll just keep falling off a cliff and dying. The reduced movement speed, at least it's a tangible thing compared to previous Tear Gas. I'm not sure I would have went with movement speed though. I probably would have went with response time. It's not a terrible choice, I'm just not sure how effective it will be. On to Medic, the Jack of all trades has a 3% critical chance increase, a 10% health increase, and a 25% recoil reduction. You could Photoshop remove the 3% critical chance and the 10% health and nothing of value from this would change. The recoil, however, will be very effective for maintaining your aim with the machine guns, and maybe stopping some of the crawl on some of the heavier assault rifles, which is going to be great for maintaining a good DPS from a reasonable range, and will also be great with tying in with a couple of the abilities that I'm going to mention in the future. As for the perk, raise the health to 15 or 20%, and raise the crit chance to 10 at least. And then maybe there'll be something worth noting on that end, or just remove them entirely and increase the recoil reduction to about 40%. Regenerative tissue is once again gonna be a joke, unless they decide to pull Strike Force Hero Story and have the adrenaline effect be a thing that you can get. Then Medic will be effectively healing at triple speed at all times, and even more intensely when below 50%, which is horrifying to think about. I can see this one being very gadget dependent, and I don't say that with amusement. Self-revive looking good, let me just get rid of that part. Alright, perfect. Once again, the question must be asked, was Charismatic made to be a perk to decrease the ability's cooldown? Or did they compensate the abilities to take longer to compensate for Charismatic? Whichever being the case will determine whether Charismatic will be an actually good perk, or if it will be a crutch to make Medic's abilities not suck. Medipack instantly heals you for 50% of your health. I'm not gonna lie, this just feels like having yet another self-revive atop of yourself. It's nothing revolutionary, but it's also a good replacement for Kevlar for saving the Medic in split-second moments, assuming the cost isn't ridiculous or anything. And it still lacks the benefit of Kevlar, which was far superior on Medic than Tank, which was you could stack it on itself and you could use your safety of range to keep it on you, and if you got caught by a burst combo, you could just deploy another set of Kevlar. Can't really do that here. Overclock increases your overall speed by 25%, which includes movement, shooting, and reloading. If it does what it says on the tin, it'll probably be amazing. Depending on its cost, because that drastically increases your DPS and your control over scenarios, while providing you none of the survivability you'd get from the other options. I think this works as an effective measure for an offensive choice on Medic. And now we're on to Maximum Overdrive. Every Medic kill streak is activated for the entire team with 20% increased effectiveness, meaning everybody on your team gets healed instantly for 60% of their health. They get the speed boost, except now it's a 30% boost, and rapid regen is only 20% as redundant. So yeah, this probably takes forever to charge and you probably require Charismatic just to get a chance to use it, because that is insanely powerful. Not only does it give you all the effects, but an amplified version? Like, just for the medic alone, that would be insane. But applying that to your entire team, especially in a game that will include co-op, that is such a substantial boost that on its own could probably just turn around a match on its heel. Honestly, I think they might want to reduce it a bit just because an ability that powerful will only be OP if you make it actually obtainable in a reasonable rate. And anyway, rapid regen's back in case you're feeling too useful. It fascinates me to no end that they have 2 alternatives to team sustain and 1 far superior personal medic sustain, and yet they still for some reason decided to keep in rapid regen. Look, uninterruptible health regen's nice and all, but we've seen the Strikeforce heroes TTK. This is not gonna be relevant. I think any way that you could make this viable would just make it overpowered. And honestly, I couldn't tell you what to replace it with, because anything you replace it with will also be accounted for in maximum overdrive, and that's gonna be a pain in the balance. But hey, let's move on to the once per life debacle. So I think fundamentally that the once per life decision is disadvantageous for the player, while simultaneously being stronger for the bots. Raze and Strikeforce heroes are balanced around the idea that you, the player, are a powerhouse. The difficulty raises as you have to carry harder and harder without a team, and for that to happen, you have to be fairly competent while taking advantage of the bot's weak points. That means abilities like Blur and Quick Revive were very useful abilities for stopping yourself from causing another death to be racked up on the points, while leaving you vulnerable without a perk until you get it back. If you held out long enough, you could use this ability multiple times in a life. This would allow you to take more risks and still be successful in a single life. But making it once per life is a one and done thing where you're not going to benefit from it a second time. Now earlier I said this benefits the bots, and you may be thinking of the counter argument of, well in a lot of scenarios you die more often than 30 seconds. So theoretically you'd be having these abilities available more often. And I will say yes, it will depend on the scenario, but also, you will be killing the bots a lot more often than they'll be killing you. That's just the nature of things and how the campaign works. And the bots will have the once per life ability, meaning that they will typically have more opportunities to proc these abilities than you will. This means if you're playing a machine gun commando, a shield tank, or, well let's face it, probably anything but Magnum with medic, and that's still stretching it, you will probably be constantly proccing Blur on assassins that you're about to kill, which will give them the opportunities to kill you with their high damage burst while they're invulnerable. This also means that self-revive medic bots will have essentially just 50% more health. This means in these scenarios you'll be putting your neck out more often trying to deal with these bots while yourself having less saving graces, which is why I think it's very important to bring back the cooldown system, and have some sort of visual indicator that shows you when the cooldown is done. I think that would be a very good quality of life change. But yeah, I think that's my general thoughts right now. I know this is a bit lowish quality, and I'll probably drop other content like this while the game's in development, but I intend to try to drop something of, actual quality when it comes to editing. I've been working on a lot of projects lately, so for now, this is all I got. I hope you all have a good day and be safe.